You're listening to the CD Baby DIY Music Podcast. All right, well, we're here with another edition of the CD Baby DIY Musicians Podcast, a Roundtable edition, and with me is Chris.
Hey.
And Robert.
Hello.
And no Jordan this time. She couldn't make it. So we had a two-part episode on music licensing, and we'll get into rehashing some of that in a little bit. First off, we just want to talk a little news/current events, and seems like every time we turn around, Radiohead is doing something new and interesting and kind of setting a new precedent for ways of connecting with your fans. And I'm sure you guys saw this.
I did. Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, Radiohead is now selling one song on iTunes that is split up into, well, it's 5 different downloads, I believe, but it's different tracks. So you can make your own mix and then, I guess, post it to their website or whatever.
And are these MP3 tracks or...
Yeah, that's the only thing. It's MP3s. Well, it's not MP3s. It's the AAC format because it's from iTunes.
But the cool thing is that anyone that has a Mac can download them from iTunes and then put them into GarageBand, which comes with, I think, most or all Macs, and then just pretty much simply do the remix from there.
Okay.
Without having to have too much fancy gear.
So I didn't purchase it personally, but I think it's grouped like, probably one track's probably a stereo drum mix.
Yeah.
And I don't know if like the bass track is just on the left side of one track and then something else on the right side so they can get more in there, or if it's just, I don't know how they grouped it. But it was just interesting and something new.
One more example of how savvy artists and, marketers are using the interactive aspects of new media and digital media in order to attract more fans. I mean, at this point, people want to be able to interact with digital content that they buy, and it also, it attracts fans. And then those fans go out and redistribute it, in its new form and pass on the brand name and act as little little dispersers of
right. And it'll be interesting to see if more bands try to follow suit, because I think this is the first time I've seen it happen in like the iTunes store, where lots of bands have done that on their website, where you can go and there's like a little flash program where it's like a mixer and you kind of remix the track on the fly. But this one was where you could actually
didn't 9 Inch Nails, they did something recently, I think, where
they've been kind of following the same footsteps.
I know a few years ago, Bare Naked Ladies made their whole Pro Tools sessions for one of their albums available to fans to remix anything they wanted, but that's a pretty cumbersome file to download.
Well, I know 9 Inch Nails, they had a GarageBand file where you could download the whole file, and this was, I think, last year. You could download the whole file and then do your remix.
That's really cool because, anybody can use GarageBand. You don't have to be a musician, and
except for the sad PC users.
Evil cackle.
Well, right. But as far as actually learning how to use it, it's a really easy way to start playing with music, and it's just, whether you have a musical background or not, you just learn the program, and all of a sudden you're composing and making weird sounds and moving things around, and it's just, it's really cool because they probably are engaging a large part, not just musicians and mixers and studio people who know how to do that stuff, but also tinkerers and Mac fans. And
and that's the cool thing to me, that it's making it fun and interactive. And also, if you're a musician or an aspiring musician, it's kind of cool to hear some of the bare tracks from an artist, because a lot of magic happens in the mix, and I'm sure that these aren't completely bare, unprocessed tracks. I think a lot of the
effects were printed.
I'm sure they were, But so it's an interesting concept. It'd be cool to hear if there was an artist out there who is actually doing something like that and getting some feedback, and if it's working for them. But Definitely. Right now, it seems like it's kind of still something that's more attractive for an established artist, as far as putting the time and effort to make that available and get a good response.
No one would really care about remixing, Joe Schmo's new tune, I don't think. Maybe they would.
Unless someone put some sort of interesting spin on it.
Right. Radiohead's, they've got that marketing thing down pat.
Since our last roundtable, I was down at South by Southwest, and I figured it would be good to do a little recap on that, and it was quite an experience, I have to say. I had no idea what to expect. And
was it a mad carnival?
It was madness, all right. It was crazy. I originally had planned on, doing a podcast with a bunch of sound samples from it, and it just got out of control and was taking too long, and I figured, I'd rather just do a little recap. But yeah, it was just unbelievable how many bands were down there. I kind of had in my mind, this is what it'd be like, and no, it's 100 times more. I mean, I think somebody told me, I heard two different numbers. Somebody told me that it was either 2,000 or 4,000 South by Southwest sanctioned showcases. So even if you go with just the lower number that someone told me, 2,000, that's a lot of performances.
Each showcase has how many shows? Or how many
well,
bands,
and I think that was, it generally was like over the course of the night, like the club might start having shows at like 6, and there would be like a band every hour in most cases, because they change over time and everything. And that doesn't include what was going on during the day, but a lot of what was going on during the day wasn't South by Southwest, sanctioned showcases. It was like companies having various, bands play, whether it be, whether it's like AT&T or, some company like that having bands promote their product, or record companies doing showcases which weren't, like South by Southwest official showcases.
Now,
there was a lot of bands.
So now South by Southwest, besides being a music festival, is sort of a music industry festival?
Yeah, and from what I hear, it's from talking to people that have been year after year, it's changed a lot in the past few years, where now it really is just kind of like a festival. They do have, like, if you have a badge, you can get into the convention center where there's a trade show, and there's a bunch of seminars. The trade show was pretty lame.
A bunch of booths with people handing out flyers? Or
Well, there was a bunch of booths, and there wasn't really... The first day I walked in there, because, CD Baby had a booth, and there was literally nobody in there that wasn't working there. I mean, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's nobody milling around looking at the booths. I expected it to be like jam-packed full of people, and there was maybe one or two stragglers.
Now, was that because everyone was just busy checking out the cool bands, or...
No, I mean, because the exhibit hall was only open for a very limited time. Like 2 days it was open 8 hours, and 1 day it was open, the last day was open for 4 hours.
Oh, okay.
Actually, six hours those first 2 days, and 4 hours the last day. So it wasn't like it was open a lot and people had time to trickle in.
And you had to have some sort of badge or something?
Yeah, I didn't realize how expensive the badges were. That's probably what deterred a lot of musicians from getting a badge. And you can get like club passes. There's all sorts of different things you can do. So it really seemed like the people that were at the seminars and in the trade show were more business type people.
But now South by Southwest, is that like the festival in the U.S.? Is that like...
Well, it's the largest like music trade show from what they say.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of people that go down there that don't get a badge, like business people, or they get a badge just to get into all the clubs.
Mm-hmm.
But they will go down there and not even go to like any of the seminars or trade show or whatever. They just go down there to meet with other people. And it was a cool getaway. It got up into the 90s while we were down there, and it was a little brutal coming back to Portland and realizing it's still winter.
Oh, and go back in the basement and play guitar.
That's right. We were all pumped up. Yes, it's spring, it's summer. Nope.
I read a lot of stuff online about how if you're lucky enough to wait in line and get into a show, that the sound is usually pretty terrible because there's tons of clubs with open doors and it's all bleeding.
Yeah, and this was our experience. I went around a lot with Dylan, who I share an office here at CD Baby with, and the first night, it had been several years since he had been there. So the first night, we thought, okay, we'll just bounce around and check out, whatever, 6th Street, and we realized both that night and Thursday night, it was Wednesday night and Thursday night, we just tried to bounce around and hit the hot spot areas. And we realized, oh man, you got to really write down what you want to go see, because you start walking down the street and there's just so much information overload that it's next to impossible to keep track of everything and
Stay focused.
Yeah, stay focused. And then
I'd have to wear a beeper.
Yeah,
You guys,
it was crazy. It's
I'd never
funny.
come home.
The whole time, like those first 2 days, I was just like lost, going, my gosh, they need to have like a seminar or something on how to attend South by Southwest, and I found out they actually do.
How to navigate.
But it was during the interactive, because they have interactive, which is geared towards web development and just like internet things, and that's going on during like the film festival, and those happen like the weekend before the music festival. So, but yeah, you're walking around, you're trying to just bounce around, and I'm like, well, this didn't work. And part of the problem is you also have to know which venues are good.
Yeah.
Because like Chris was just mentioning that one of the showcases we went to, the artist was playing downstairs, and it was this tiny, tiny club. Probably about 30 people could fit around the front of the stage, and there was 30 people. Right next to the stage were stairs going up to the next level of the club, where there was another band playing. And when he stopped playing, it was like a rock show. When he stopped playing, the other band, that's all you hear, and it's so loud. And so when there's all these bands just like clashing,
Noise pollution.
yeah, I mean, it was, so some of the venues were just absolutely out of control like that. There was one where Barsook Records, I was talking to Josh from Barsook, and he was saying that their showcase, he was a little disappointed because it was supposed to be more acoustic, and they're playing on this 3rd floor stage of this pretty popular club down there, and it was open, like, it had kind of a covering, but it was open to the outside, and their shows was like Nada Surf was doing an acoustic set, and there was so much noise that club itself had like 4 other bands playing with inside of it. Not only was that an issue, but apparently the bathroom was right behind the stage, and the audience had to walk over the corner of the stage to get to the bathroom. And so it was just like, if you don't get in the right club, you could
that's
go.
not a surf if you're like an unknown band.
And they played. The other thing I noted is that almost all the bands that were established played like once every day somewhere.
Oh, okay.
And one day you would see them at a club where there's nobody there, and the other in that kind of situation where it's like less than great conditions, and then another day you'd see them at an outside tent with a great sound system packed out.
Yeah.
So it was just weird. The Friday and Saturday we thought, all right, we wrote everything down. We're just gonna bounce around, and now that we know where we're gonna go, Friday and Saturday, all the locals come out, and the streets are like similar to the time I was down in New Orleans, near around the time of Mardi Gras. Not actually during Mardi Gras, but it was like just jam packed.
Sea of people.
Yeah, and there was a line to get into everything, and it's like, well, so much for writing everything down. So it was quite an experience. I think one thing I was trying to take note of while I was down there is, what are bands doing to kind of grab my attention, and stuff that just kind of sticks that might be useful information for the other artists. And one of the coolest things I saw down there was this band had bought a school bus. They had it all painted cool on the outside.
Yeah.
And they had parked it right in front of Emo's, which is one of the more popular venues on 6th Street.
Mm-hmm.
And they just had a little generator underneath. It was a school bus, but on the inside there was a couple couches. All the chairs were cleared out. They had a little drum riser built in the back with the drummer, and they had the whole band set up in the back of the bus.
Cool.
And they just did a concert inside the thing, and it was $1 to get in. And so I paid $1 to get in. And it actually, they got about 10, 15 people. And the funny thing was, as soon as they started playing, all these official media from South by Southwest were like, hey, what's going on? And they were all in there videoing and everything. And that was one of the coolest things, and
what were they, party crashers? I mean, was this a sanctioned show?
No, they just found a street parking right in front of the venue.
They were allowed to stay there
Yeah.
for a while and
Yeah.
just keep playing.
Guerrilla marketing.
The funny thing was, a couple days later, I saw them in a totally different part of town, and it was free, and I paid $1.
Oh man, you have to ask for your $1 back.
But it was, what? They were actually one of the better bands I saw.
Wow.
It was really good. So that was cool. And then there's so much stuff being handed out. And I guess the one thing that I talked to an artist, and one of the things that he said that kind of made me think, okay, maybe it is worth it for artists to come down here at least once, was that he was saying that it's good for artists to come down here and just see how many bands are out there and just see how much competition there is as far as, getting your music out there.
Yeah.
And I think he meant it in a healthy way as far as
getting a little perspective and
and that's what he's saying, it gives you
humility.
Yeah, it gives you a different perspective, especially people that come from smaller towns that aren't in a big musical, scene, when they're trying to get people, in LA to pay attention to their music or whatever, and they don't realize how many thousands and thousands and thousands of bands are out there, doing the exact same thing. And when you're there, it's just kind of all in your face, and you just can't. You're like, whoa.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg, because you think, like, in Portland, there's probably 2,000 to 4,000 bands here, and maybe 20 of them went to South by Southwest.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. There's a lot of bands out there.
Yeah.
So that was my South by Southwest experience. The biggest tip, though, I can give you is when it's 2:30 in the morning and you have to be up at 4:30 in the morning to catch a flight back home, don't stop for 9 tacos at a street vendor.
Oh, 9 tacos.
We didn't mean to buy 9, but it just so happened that there was some miscommunication. We bought 3 tacos for somebody else too, and we're not going to let these go to waste. Boy, after that hour of sleep, we were not feeling so hot. So anyway, let's move on to talk a little bit about licensing. So, what you guys think of the guests we had? Anything jump out at you?
I thought it was really great. I think both part 1 and part 2 were really, really valuable interviews with, 4 very knowledgeable people. And I think that if you haven't considered sync licensing and you're serious about your career, like, if you didn't get a chance to listen to them, go back and listen to them, because it's a really valuable way to make money in indie music, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely a new market for indie artists, and it's something that sync licensing has been going on for a long time. Basically every time music is used back, the dawn of film, that's basically what's being sync licensing. But things have changed recently where indie artists can create great music, and that's all they need. They're not interested in celebrity most of the time. And so it's much easier to deal with indie artists and get their music quicker and sometimes cheaper. But, if it helps get your music out there, it's definitely a great thing to be a part of. And you do have to educate yourself a little bit on, just what it is and how people go about doing that job. Otherwise, you're just going to end up sending CDs off to nowhere. But
and there's a whole bunch of different angles too. Like, I was approached in the past month by a company that does licensing for presentations and sort of office functions and stuff like that. So it's not necessarily all TV and movies. You got to kind of specialize within licensing.
It can be anything, and that's one thing I was going to clear up just in case there was some confusion. Sometimes artists will say, well, what's the difference between sync licensing and just getting played on the radio? Not to get in a big discussion about radio, but basically, radio stations will pay a blanket license to ASCAP, CSAC, and BMI, and that allows them to play anything from those catalogs, as much as they want. And then those organizations collect the money and disperse it between the songwriters. Well, with this, someone's actually syncing up, taking your song and fixing it to their visual presentation, and for that it's something totally different, and so it's a synchronization license and doesn't fall under performance royalties. For that, it could be a website, it could be an office presentation, it could be a major film, TV, it could be anything
Podcast,
video podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities out there, and you have to know a little bit about the people you're sending your music to in order to make any headway. So I think the best thing for an indie artist is to start with working with a licensing company, and that's going to be your best bet. If you do a Google search, there's a lot of companies out there. Pump Audio is a big one that built quite a name, but there's tons of them out there that have those relationships with music supervisors that, they're going to take your music when it's appropriate and pitch it to those people. Because if you just start sending your music to all these people, just like CD after CD, just, and just calling them up and not knowing what they're looking for, you're just going to annoy them and you're just wasting CDs. So there is an art to it. And, if you're willing to put the time into it, it can be pretty lucrative.
I mean, I know I just said that it's such a great way to make money, but it's also a really great way to get exposure. And there's also, maybe when you're just starting out, just to keep it in your head, keep it like on your plate, to remember that there are lots of content providers out there looking for music. They may not always have a budget, but they may be able to offer you free promotion in exchange. So, where, that's not exactly sync licensing. It's also like just making your music available for other artists and for other commercial purposes can serve both parties very well.
Yeah, one of the a lot of the reality-based type shows that use a ton of music, a lot of times what they'll do is like the sync licensing fee will be like $1 or something, something just to say money was exchanged. Yeah. But in turn, they say, well, it's a good opportunity for performance royalties, because when those shows play on like TV and TV specifically, when those shows play, you can also generate performance royalties by the playing of that. And if the show that your song was used in gets in reruns and plays a lot, which certain networks tend to do, you can make quite a bit off of performance royalties as well. So that's kind of what they try to use as a selling point for not actually paying a sync license.
And those performance royalties are usually getting paid to you through ASCAP or BMI?
Yes, they would be paid to them, so it'd be separate.
There's also plenty of people, I know this got mentioned in the first volume of the licensing podcast, but plenty of people who make pretty good living off of recording music specifically for the purposes of that license or obtaining that, not explaining this clearly. Basically, they find out somehow that, such and such a movie is looking for a song that sounds like Johnny Cash, but with strings. And then you go into your basement and you try and record that.
Yeah, and that's a big thing for, especially I think with people writing for commercials, which is another thing that we didn't mention, because those end up on TV, but the whole usage and what they're using it for that's probably one of the more difficult ones, because they need something very specific. The person who's selling a product, they want something specific to attach to their product that they think will have the emotional appeal to help sell their product. Where a movie, you might just want a certain kind of mood, or a TV show. But yeah, Joey from Blue Scout Music, he does a lot of that, and he mentioned that in the interview that a lot of times, he'll get a call, and there was that one time where he actually contacted a musicologist just to make sure that he wasn't approaching copyright infringement, just because these people are, basically saying
something exact.
Yeah, and I had a friend before where I forget what company it was. It was somebody that you would never think of. I think it was a software company here in Portland, something like that, something having to do with the tech side of things. And they paid him $10,000 to write something that sounded close to Beautiful Day by U2. And it didn't need lyrics or anything. They just wanted that feel and that vibe. And it was interesting. He played me the song, and I think he captured it, but without crossing the line. But, it was $10,000. And I don't even think it was for public performance. I think it was just something solely internal for this company.
Wow.
But that company that size, I think of Microsoft, $10,000. They trip over $10,000 in the hallway. It's like.
Yeah. I remember hearing a story of what's the guy that runs Merge Records? Is it Superchunk? Is that the band or Super?
They're on Merge, yeah. Superchunk.
So he was approached with an offer for, someone wanted to use one of their songs. I forget. I think it might have been on a TV show or something. And at the time, he was really hesitant. There was the whole selling out thing and attaching your art to commerce in some evil way. So eventually, the person who was trying to license the song said, "Look, if you don't sell it to us, we're just going to pay someone else to make an exact copy." And he was like,
"Oh my God.
Oh man, all right."
I think with artists, when if you're thinking about, well, how can I get into this, you got to really think outside of the box for this one. Generally, the first thing that artists think about is, who do I know that's in music, or who do I know? But a lot of this, and people that are paying for this, are people that aren't in music. You know, like those software companies, and a lot of a lot of businesses like that are finding usages for music that they think help whatever it is, their presentation or their inner office promotion or whatever, something like that. So it's worth just seeing what kind of relationships of people you already know what they do at their jobs and what opportunities may even be there that they just didn't know, that connect the dots and say, oh yeah, my friend's an amazing composer. He can do something for us. So I mean, that's a good place to start, where you're not thinking about, I have to start calling everybody in Hollywood, because there are a lot of music supervisors in Hollywood, but there's a lot of places music is being used elsewhere. I mean, just your local TV station produces commercials and things like that, and
I remember being bowled over, and I'm just guessing, but it's probably in the early 2000s, when, if not late 90s, where you started seeing these commercials from huge brands, car commercials and stuff like that, with these indie bands or sort of unknown songs like in the background, that where I at the time thought I was a pretty savvy hip music listener, like some of the records that I had in my room that I didn't think most people knew about started showing up in car commercials.
The first time I heard Granddaddy on TV, I was like, oh man. No.
I remember Cat Power was a blow for me.
Oh.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a blow for them. They sure enjoyed the money.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. It's like, I think people have gotten over that hesitation a little bit, in the fact that artists aren't getting played on the radio anymore. I mean, and a lot of people use the catchphrase that TV's the new radio. And I
think computer's the new TV.
Computer's the new TV.
And cell phones are the new computers.
iPhones, yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of indie music, I mean, a lot of people are finding the value in indie music. And I think that's one thing. It's like, well, they may be selling cars, but at least they're saying, hey, this is really cool. And this is something that people want to hear, where, traditional radio is just not doing that. And, actually, there was a while where VW they even had this whole website that went along with their commercials that had all the artists they put together compilation CDs and everything. Uh-huh. And, I remember, man, they've been using some amazing music and found a lot of cool artists that way that I would have never heard anywhere else. So
see, there you go.
And actually, the funny thing is I mentioned that to Joey after I had done the interview with him, Joey from Blue Scout, and he was actually in one of those bands that was licensed by VW at the time. Yeah,
that's cool.
So that was kind of a cool little connection. But anyway, it can be something that can really help your career. And I know a lot of artists are pretty much unknown, as far as like they're not household names. When they come to town, people don't necessarily know who they are like they would, a bigger name that's being promoted by a label. But a lot of those artists with music licensing are making a decent living and able to live off their music. And, and a lot of us, that's what we're just trying to do.
Exactly. I wanted to just say thank you to Tig Cook from Ireland, who donated to our Buy Us a Cup of Joe fund. Or actually, I think it says Buy Us a Cup of Coffee now on the website.
Yes, we appreciate that. Coffee keeps us going.
And I actually had to look up how Tig spelled his name, or how you pronounce Tig, because it's spelled Tadhg.
Wow.
But so hopefully I'm getting it right. But thank you, Tig.
We'll probably hear about it. All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition, this Roundtable edition of the CD Baby Podcast. We'll catch you next time. You've been listening to the CD Baby DIY Music Podcast, broadcasting from Portland, Oregon, USA.
Oh, 9 tacos.
I would never give up on anyone, even when times are bad.